Hello and welcome to Deep in the D-Pad, where we explore all things gaming through an intellectual lens. I'm your friendly neighborhood host and level designer Carlos, and with me as always is RK Taylor.
Hello.
Yeah, so today's episode is about trash talk. We're going to be talking all that smack. We're going to be talking about talking smack and trying to figure out, what exactly is trash talk. Does a sanitation worker need to show up and collect all this trash you've been talking? Who knows? Let's find out. But first, let's jump into our D-pad delights.
Oh my gosh, so silly. Okay.
Ryan, what's been your delightful gaming moment or story for this week? Let's say the past 2 weeks. Anything good happen?
Yeah, I guess so. Plenty of things. How do you narrow it down, right? So we're recording this, what's today, Carlos? Like March
20th.
Yeah. It's hard to talk about this, right? Because, we don't know how long this is going to go on, right? This could be the very, very beginning of a war that lasts a decade, right? But we're in the midst of, or the beginning, perhaps, of, Russia invading Ukraine and seeing what the aftermath of that is going to be. And in, kind of famously, the U.S. has not sent troops at this point to Ukraine. But there is a Humble Bundle deal where you can get 123 items and pay at least $40, and they're mostly games, but they're also art assets for developers, and there are different programs that can be used for game development. And I believe they have books and ebooks and comics and things too. And you pay at least $40, and they'll basically give you all of these things. And the proceeds are going to Ukraine, allegedly. I'm not sure how funds are being disseminated. Let's see, 100% of the proceeds will go to the Razom for Ukraine, International Rescue Committee, International Medical Corps, and Direct Relief. The reason why I want to talk about this is because we so frequently speak about the content of the game itself, right? Why is Psychonauts 2 a good game? What new ideas is it giving to us as players? What benefits do we get from playing? And this is really kind of stepping outside the game analysis itself. This is something that is, sociopolitical or, historical, and a bunch of developers or publishers are getting together and making a decision to really not get profits on these games. They're willing to donate essentially for a geopolitical cause. And I don't think we see that very frequently, and it kind of speaks to how serious this is. I mean, especially with the fact that it's over 100 properties that you would be getting access to. There's something just so beautiful about this, and there's an incentive for gamers to participate in this because they are getting a lot out of the deal, but it's doing something humanitarian, and you can look at it as it's selfish because perhaps people just want the games and they want them as quickly as possible, and they may not care about the politics of it, but at the end of the day the money is still going to a cause. I'm assuming it's a good cause, right? I haven't vetted these particular organizations, but based on the on what it's standing for and how it's being marketed and advertised, it does seem like it's going to people who are immiserated by Putin's political strategies. Did you look at that, Carlos? Did you look at the Humble Bundle deal?
Yeah, I did take a look at it. I was actually rescanning through it again while you talked about it, and it is such a large number of items. It's 123 items overall, and it says currently pay at least $40 for all of these. And like you said, it's games, just a whole variety of games, honestly, from indie stuff like Slay the Spire, although that's a well-known indie game. But you have just kind of ones that you might have never heard before, like the USB stick found in the grass. But on top of games, you're getting a bunch of development assets. You're even getting some courses. I saw the entire Unity game developer course, whatever, on that too, and that's really cool. There's also, I guess, Warhammer or Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons style books. It's really... This is a super wildly varied bundle, and it's all the more enticing, I imagine, for a wider group of people to sort of buy into this or make it more enticing to, get this and then put that money to a good place. And right now it says they have a little over 8 million raised for charity at the top of the webpage, and that's freaking dope. I hope they get much more, and I am hoping maybe we see more bundles like this in the future, but that might just be more my corpo cynicism coming out because it's sort of, at least to me, feels like, this is only happening and on, obviously for good reason, but like this is only happening because of like this current, like big, hotly spoken about like topic just everywhere. And, once we get out of this being in the news headlines like every day, will Humble kind of like do this initiative again, but for a country that maybe might not be in actual war conflict at the time? Or is it more so just going to go back to business as usual? Like, hey, here's a couple of games or a couple of comic books, give us some money, and we're going to give it to like, cancer research or something. But even then, it's like, some small portion of it at this point, because Humble is now like a bigger business than what it was initially.
I mean, I don't think we can expect Humble Bundle to do this kind of thing all the time. I mean, it speaks to the fact that this is a really extreme circumstance, and there are people who really could use the money, or like there are organizations that are trying to provide relief that really need the money. And I mean, at the end of the day, Humble Bundle is a business, right? And like they need to make money, and like if they're just because they do like one drive to try to get a bunch of funds toward one place, like I'm not going to be upset with them for not solving the like cancer riddle, like for not being able to crack the code of leukemia, it's, or put money toward doing so, like I'm not sure if that's kind of like what you were getting at, but like the problem is that there are two ways of looking at this cynically, right? You can look at it cynically as the consumer, which is what I was getting at earlier. The problem being that like consumers don't actually care about the politics; they just want the games or the assets or whatever. And the other part is, the corporation may just be trying to like look good, and it's like, oh, look, we stand with Ukraine. Look how great we are. Like now you're going to go to Humble Bundle in the future. They're going to get a bunch of people getting their emails now. On a pragmatic level, it's working though, right? Like assuming that the money is being distributed and it leads to actual real world change. Assuming that the distribution efforts are a success. It kind of doesn't matter whether or not what incentive people have for buying this. I think on some level. But I think that there are a decent number of people who have heard a lot about Ukraine, weren't going to donate money to the Ukraine, and this was the thing that tips the scales. It's like, oh, I can donate to Ukraine and also get something else.
Right, yeah. It's making it a transaction rather than this, I guess, like one-way giving street or something like that. Like, you can help Ukraine, but you can still be kind of selfish, too, by getting, like, a lot of games and whatever else.
Yeah, you don't have to cut holes in your pockets to help Ukraine. You're able to go to the store and buy a candy bar, and it's like, you paid $1 for this candy bar. 50 cents of that candy bar is going to go to Ukraine. And you're like, great, I have a candy bar. Who the fuck cares where the rest of that money's going,
Exactly, yeah. One last thing I wanted to bring up on this bundle is that, as I was looking through it, I was just curious to know, how were these games selected? Was it like Humble that just looked through the library and was like, you know what, here, or did they reach out via email or something like that to developers, or did developers, hear that they were going to do this package and then said, hey, use our game for it? That would be interesting to learn about, is like, how do the Humble Bundles actually get curated? What deals are going on that say a game is going to be featured on the bundle or what have you? And especially for this one, because it is for such a big kind of charity reason that has like global awareness to it, was it handled the same way as like, how they curate the other Humble Bundles? Or like I said, did developers reach out to them? Did they reach out to developers? Like, how did this bundle come together? That would be something that would be super interesting to watch. It's like how it's made, basically.
I would love to know as well. Yeah, it would be really interesting to see. Because I mean, it took a lot of effort. It said like over 120 pieces of content.
Yeah.
So it's a ton. Yeah. If you didn't know about it, I think it is a good thing to know about and remind ourselves that gaming can really impact the world, right? And in both the content and also in the execution, distribution, and so that's one of the things I love about the show, is that we can talk about it from all angles. We can talk about it from industry, we can talk about it from publishing, we can talk about it from the enjoyment of the game itself. But that is I feel like this might be like a record for like my longest D-pad delight ever. But like, so I'm getting a little anxious, and I'm gonna just back off the stage now. Carlos, what do you got going on for your D-pad delight today, my man?
So taking a somewhat giant leap away from Ukraine and into the lands of Japan, my D-pad delight has to do with the game Aragami 2. This is a stealth game on Game Pass, and you are playing basically as a ninja with like shadow abilities, and that's where the fantastical element comes in. But anyway, the delight is more so around Ryan and I actually playing co-op together. So the first game was entirely single player. As far as I recall, there might have been some sort of limited multiplayer mode, but the sequel now kind of goes more all in on this format of like, okay, let's get you and a team of 1 or 2 other ninjas, go into a village, do an objective, get out of there. And I'm really liking that. But I am very stealth focused. I try not to raise any alarms. I try for Ghost, basically.
Oh no, you're gonna roast me. I did not realize that's where this that's where this D-pad delight is going, everybody. Carlos is ready to trash me. This is the trash talk episode. I see now. I see the connection you're
making.
Don't
have the roast anything. You were already getting roasted by all the fucking rocket launchers you were setting off just by jumping in front of people. So, like, I am very much the Ghost. Ryan is very much the Oni or the demon, where, like, every enemy just needs to be killed. Like, he does not want to knock them out. He doesn't want to worry about, like, hiding bodies and shit. He's like, no, sorry, 3 guys around the fireplace. Let me just, like, kill one of you maybe secretly, but let me jump in the fireplace that you're all staring at. That's usually like his initial strategy.
I'm a heavy-footed ninja. I mean, that's the problem. I'm just lumbering around as loudly as a man can.
The delightful part of that is that the game allows for this and the ability to kind of like fix up a mistake. Like, I'm not rewinding time like it's Prince of Persia or something like that, but you know, you can run away, you can re-hide. The thing that I find really fun / delightful about it is that we do not share this type of like awareness or something like that. Like, meaning the AI, when they discover you, they don't immediately say, there's another ninja in the area, like search for him. Like, they're only focused on you, and that creates for fun, like almost Ocean's 11 type shenanigans where it's like, oh yeah, fake a heart attack in the middle of the casino floor, which is you're like jumping into the fire pit and like attracting everyone in the area. Meanwhile, I'm like just like sidling or hanging along this freaking drawbridge that I'm like trying to get across, and suddenly half the village just leaves the objective thing that I'm going for, and I'm like, why is that? And I turn my camera just a little bit and hear massive explosions, and I just see Ryan as like this shadow ninja, like just jumping, just running around in circles, like jumping over and over, trying to dodge what's happening to him.
Yeah, you needed a diversion, man. I'm doing it for the team.
That's our synergy, right? I just got the Pink Panther in there and like grabbed the thing, but sometimes, occasionally, Ryan brings the whole village into the house that I'm trying to do something in.
Yeah, to your point, I think it's very smart that the game is as forgiving as it is, in the sense that you can go through and just parkour silently, or you can try to master the combat system, or you could do both, you know, and you also you have the opportunity to knock people out, and you have the opportunity to kill people, you know, depending on what your play style is. I think that that's really smart to give that much player agency. It's not even in a particular part of the game. It like is the whole game, you know, like there are different mechanics that you can utilize, and it can be fun for different people. And it, like you're saying, it makes for a great co-op experience because we can each play to our different strengths, like, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it reminds me a lot of just like how stealth games evolved. Like, I was very into the Splinter Cell series as it was coming out, and seeing how that evolved over the years and like started integrating co-op and how that co-op was handled. Like, Aragami 2 gave me a lot of those like later Splinter Cell co-op vibes. Like, I want to say probably around like Conviction and or just before Conviction. Like, the biggest difference though is that, at least as those games went on, it leaned off of the hard stealth. it still had that as like its own mode, basically, meaning like being a ghost was pretty much like its own challenge, like a whole different level entirely. If you get spotted or if an alarm goes off, like that's it, game over, you need to restart again. And the more mainline modes, or the more widely accessible modes, were the ones where you could get spotted, go back into hiding, maybe have a moment to kill the guy or something like that. And I think in general that's just a better design philosophy to use when making these stealth games, because for me, I absolutely love it when I can like understand what is going on in the level. I know all the variables, and then I go through it perfectly and maybe have the touch like little to nothing in the level, right? Kind of similar to seeing those like Dishonored speed runs where people are doing these wildly intricate like acrobatic kills and what have you because they just played the level so many times. But with stealth games, I kind of like it when they get more just let the player do whatever they want. And that feels interesting to me because I'm usually somewhat saying the opposite when it comes to a lot of more modern like open world games that sort of lead with that philosophy of like just let the player do whatever they want, and that like rubs me in wrong ways at various points. But for this, like, I think because it's not trying to be a whole big game of like 50 different like theme park rides for you to be trying at any given moment, it makes for a still focused but more fun experience because it's only lightly relaxed. It's not like full on relaxed, like just do whatever the hell you want. And maybe some will see this game as that, but I'm currently not really seeing that. It still feels very kind of like focused to me. It's just not failing us for doing one thing wrong, which is nice. I think there is a modifier to like turn on that type of mode, and maybe at some point like I'll do that, but for now, like, it's a real fun time. I know we haven't played all that much, but like what I did play of it made me really want to play more.
I don't really have much patience for stealth games in general. I really have to like kind of discipline myself if I'm going to play a stealth game and try to take it seriously. Like, you know, it's like things like Inside are like kind of like my perfect level of stealth, you know, where it's like just, you know, it's like, okay, I can see all the action that I need to directly in front of me, but I'm just running along one axis, basically.
Maybe we should start by mentioning that you are an Xbox ambassador.
Please stop this.
You are very familiar with the trash talking policy that Phil Spencer has put into place. We know you have a green Xbox Series X in your living room because you're paid off by Microsoft for being their ambassador. But I think you would be a really good person to talk to about this and start us off by like trying to create some parameters or some sort of definition for like what we would consider trash talk. To me, trash talk seems like anything you just say to somebody to mess with them during a game, but like it could be a lot more intricate than that. I mean, you could say a whole lot of things to mess with someone, and obviously some of those things are going to be really intense and others are going to be like wacky, like, you know, why did you say 2 + 2 is 5? It's like, what do you mean? I'm trying to mess with your head. Ha ha ha. So what do you think is like a good sort of like grounding definition? Yeah.
Yeah, we could do this together. I would say that trash talk is language used in a competitive environment that is intended to undermine one's opponent or someone who they view as like bringing them down in some way. There's some kind of adversarial relationship that is a part and parcel to trash talk. Yeah, and okay, it's obviously language. It's obviously someone like done to someone who is pissing you off or upsetting you in some degree, and it's a speech act to communicate that. And then there are different types, and we could like dig into that. But like as a functional definition, do you feel like is that enough? It feels like there aren't enough parameters on that. But what do you think?
Yeah, it feels a little light. I like that we called out that it's like very much language. It's going to be aimed at somebody. It's like not necessarily offensive language, but it's the use of language in a usually, I don't know whether it's like combative or contentious manner, but like you're using language, it's meant to mess with somebody slash like hinder their playing experience a little bit, like maybe take their focus off the game. I don't know if that absolutely has to be part of the definition, but the target can be anyone. Like it's not just their opponent. Like trash talk could be aimed at, let's say, teammates if you're playing League of Legends or something like that, and one of your teammates is like pissing you off, and now you decide to like trash talk them for not performing as well as you'd hope they did, right? It's obviously not the best use of trash talk. Like you want to be on your team's side, but you know, some people roll how they roll.
Yeah, I think that trash talk is kind of like the least offensive version of hate speech, or like it's like the first tier on like a hate speech hierarchy, where like the worst hate speech imaginable is like at the top. The mindset that one has when they're engaging in trash talk is like they're on that first step, you know. Maybe it's a little extreme. I don't really mean that to be like a particularly controversial point. I'm really just brainstorming right here. There's something about it also that kind of seems like virtue signaling to me, in the sense that it's not really about the content of what you're saying. It's about like how you want the other people to feel about what you're saying. So it's less about like, if I say, you have half a brain, Carlos, right? I know that that's not like a witty or interesting piece of trash talk, but I'm not actually saying anything about your brain. I want you to like feel put down. I want you to know that whatever you're doing, I don't like it, and I'm trying to signal that in some way. So it's like hate signaling instead of like virtue signaling, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So trash talk is going to be like the use of language against another player with the specific intent to mess with them. I'm thinking like I want to get to the core thing of like, I say something, you go what, and like take your attention off the game just a little bit, and that gives me the upper hand, right? We we recorded an episode a while back about getting tilted, right? And like trash talk could really add to that meter of getting someone tilted quickly. And if we're playing Rocket League, right, and we had the ability to trash talk the other team, it's quite possible that we could like turn a game around by like trash talking them, or not even turn it around. Maybe it's like neck and neck, and they happen to like let things slip because we said just the right thing to kind of like take them off their toes.
You really think that psychological warfare should be part of the functional definition? You want like essentially you think that this is a strategy or a tactic that's being employed, you know, it's outside of the game, but it becomes a part of the game in the sense that the players are a part of the game, and that they're, you know, like the baggage that they bring to the table. If you get into a fight with your spouse and then you go try to play Rocket League and you're, you know, sloppy at Rocket League because you have all this stress going on, right? Like that's part of the game. That stress, that fight that with your partner is part of the game in that sense. You think that trash game is kind of functioning on this level where it's outside of the game, but kind of creating the game and creating the environment and the mood that the game is existing in, the context of the game. And psychological warfare, is that too strong of a concept, or is it
psychological warfare feels like too strong of a word, but that is exactly what I'm getting at. Like it's so another game on top of the game you're actively playing, right? Like if you were playing like local Smash Brothers, and maybe this was like, I don't feel like this is only a New York City growing up type thing. Like I definitely think this was like in a lot of different places, but you know, you're playing Smash Brothers, or you're playing Madden, or you're playing Halo, and you know, you're sitting there, you're playing the game, think like kills are happening, what have you, and then, you know, someone starts talking shit, maybe someone does a teabag onto you, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, now the first rock has been thrown. Like, like there could potentially be trash talk actions, but I kind of want to like focus on the more verbal side of things, right? At that point, you know, somebody could be like, oh, like, you suck, and then it becomes like, oh, okay, well, now I'm kind of like, if I want to partake in the game of the back and forth of trash talk, like, I now need to think of like better and wittier, maybe outlandish comebacks, while also thinking of like everything happening on the game level. And you can hit this point, right, where now you have this like battle of the minds going on with the trash talk, but you also have the battle of the game happening at the same time. And you know, and I'm sure at some point, if like one person is like, oh yeah, you suck so bad, my grandma could beat you, and another person was like, yeah, well, I I suck. You know, like it becomes this very like stupid, like, wow, okay, so like it becomes a very stupid moment. You feel like you've lost the battle even though the game is still going on, right? But and in that moment have lost like the meta layer of game, which has been trying to break your opponent's will, because you effectively didn't have anything witty and better and or more biting to come back with, right?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That all makes sense to me. I do like the idea that there's some element of like mind game or like trolling that's being used across.
We could call it psychological sparring rather than warfare.
Sparring is fair. Sparring assumes that, but like both people are kind of coming to the mat with the expectation that they're going to have like a fair practice round. When you're playing a competitive game and you're using this language, when you're coming up with things to say to throw off your opponent, it obviously it's not an act of war, right? It's two people, not like two societies or two countries or whatever. But it gives you this kind of sense of there's something truly competitive about this, where it's not just about your skill anymore. It's about, I have to undermine you. I have to use subterfuge to try to like achieve my end. In order for me to be the top dog here, I need to make sure that these other people, by any means necessary, are going to be, quieted, or their performance is going to be reduced. And so in that sense, there's something about it that almost feels like cheating, right? But it's socially acceptable. At least, you mentioned that I'm an Xbox ambassador, a fact that nobody cares about except you, and something I almost always forget about, because I signed up to be an Xbox ambassador in part to like accrue rewards, and the rate of rewarding is, it's like often lottery based. It's just not worth whatever it is that I could be doing to accrue points. It's like, gosh, so many things have point systems. But anyway, the point is, like, I'm supposed to report people, and like I'm on the lookout for toxic behavior, blah blah blah. Literally never report anybody. I don't really see trash talk very frequently anymore. I feel like it was, perhaps when we were younger, it was something that I heard a lot more of, but maybe it's just like I'm not in those circles anymore. And it's often kids that when I do hear it, I feel like it's often children, like people who obviously have voices that aren't like fully developed, and I'm not going to report a kid, like, unless he just is doing something. A kid would have to do some really toxic stuff. Like, for me as an adult man to report an 11-year-old boy, there's something about that feels really wrong. Like, I want him to kind of like live his life and learn his lessons and have more like natural consequences, like social consequences. Like, people are just like, bro, that's not cool, or something like that, rather than just someone reporting you, which may make you feel really angry and not cause you to reflect as deeply, because it feels this kind of authority. I think the cues from your friends to like be a better person are really like more valuable. Like, it's positive peer pressure in a sense. Wow, I feel like I'm so off track, bro. Where am I?
We were talking about trash talk, right? And you're mentioning like your experience as an Xbox ambassador, right? We know it's on your resume. And I think we kind of have like a pretty decent definition, if not like markers, of trash talk.
Yeah,
like
that
what
was
trash
fun.
talk is. Something I'd like to know is like, when you were signing up to be an Xbox ambassador, or if you had to read any materials, did the mighty Microsoft gods like have any sort of like in-text ruling on like what is trash talk, what is not trash talk, or what is trash talk going too far?
Yeah, I actually did like skim most of those like pamphlets that they wanted us to read, and I was looking back to try to find what their guidelines are, trash talk, and I had the same kind of how would you say it, like, not shock, but like just kind of a thoughtful, like, reflective moment. They have like a bullet that says like some trash talk is okay, as long as it's not like harassment or something. And I think that the assumption that what harassment is and that you can identify it, right? You could like look up on Google what harassment is, and perhaps that they have like documents that are fully fleshing out what harassment is. But in the Xbox community standards, it doesn't, at first glance, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of information. It's just kind of like expected that and I think we should distinguish between harassment and trash talk. And like they specifically state that you're not allowed to like threaten anybody, right? Like, for example, right? Like that is a no-go. You're suspended if you threaten anybody. And a threat takes the form of I will do X, or if you do Y, I will do Z, so those are, I think, are like the main formulations that threats can take.
Now, would this be threats outside of the game? Like, is it like, oh, if you pick up that rocket launcher in Halo, I'm going to grab the sniper and headshot you? Or is it like, if you pick up that rocket launcher, I'm going to go to your home in Chicago and do something?
It's definitely more the latter. I mean, and I think you can imply, like, if you're playing a game that doesn't have guns and you say, if you jump off that, I will shoot you, and like, obviously the character doesn't have a gun, I would consider that a threat, like a real life threat, because you have, there's no obvious reason why I would think you're talking about the game. It seems the conclusion that one would naturally draw there is like, either this character has a gun and I didn't know about this because I didn't know there were guns in this game, or this person is actually saying that they're going to shoot me, But I think the threats and harassment have more to do with like kind of like a psychological illness in the person who's making them. I think that that's more of like an obsession or a fixation. And trash talk doesn't need to really require that. There's an adversarial spirit for trash talk, but it's not like according to the Xbox community standards, there's a place for it. Like it is not considered like categorically bad. Like there's something about it that they think fuels fun gameplay, whereas the harassment and the threatening and those kinds of things are just those are categorically bad. Those kinds of things can get you banned, and also, like, I will worry about you if I find out that you're harassing people. If there's some kind of persistent like fixation on a particular person, if you're kind of like virtually stalking them, those are the kinds of things I would consider harassment to distinguish them. Like it could be sexual comments that someone is making, or but I think for something to be a harassment, it has to be persistent. It has to be recurring, and given the context where someone has asked them to stop, like to end the harassment, and the person continues, I think that is like just an extremely strong case for harassment. I think that's like basically the thing that if we didn't think it was harassment before and the person persists even after being asked to stop, that should be something that raises all of our eyebrows. That's a big concern. Because someone seems unhinged, they're not willing to listen to someone else's agency.
How does that apply in Halo though, right? Like, if I'm playing Halo against somebody and I'm killing them, let's say I kill them 5 times, right? The first couple times I'm like, your grandma's bones are weak. Your grandma fucking sucks. Your grandma can't play Halo good. It's obviously like weird trash talk call out, but like, that's why I'm bringing it up as an example. Like, if after the 3rd time I'm like, your grandma's bones are weak, and the other player says like, can you stop talking about my grandma? Her bones are strong. She drinks milk every day. Like, if I am a trash talker and we are in the midst of a match, like, as an ambassador, am I in the green to keep telling him how weak his grandma's bones are when I kill him? Or because he's requested for me to stop the trash talk, does it now suddenly turn into harassment on the court?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be the authority, on what is.
You are the ambassador, though.
I know, but I want to speak more from my opinions on what I would do given a particular situation rather than on behalf of Xbox. I'm not a paid employee of Microsoft, and anything that I say here could completely get me like thrown off of ambassadorship because I could be poorly representing the company. So it's like,
that's weird. You say you're not paid by Microsoft, but I see this oddly green Judge Dredd helmet in your background, and it has the Xbox logo on it.
Literally fake news. Like, this is, you're spreading disinformation.
So how do you personally see it, right? If you're an Xbox beat cop and you're on the street and you see me talking about grandma's weak bones and the other person says to stop, are you blowing your Xbox cop whistle, or are you like, you know what? This is kind of like stupid, so like it can continue going on. But if he were saying that he's actually going to do violence to the other guy, I would blow my whistle and stop them.
Well, saying he was going to do violence, that's an immediate concern,
yes.
Right? That's an immediate whistle blown. It's like, I think it comes down to persistence. If I see someone who's like, oh, like, your grandma sucks, and the other person's like, please don't talk about my grandma, and then the person's like, your grandma sucks, and then the guy's like, I already asked you once not to talk about my grandma, like, please don't do it, and then like the third time, it's like, okay, bro, you had 3 strikes, like, this is beyond, it's targeted at this point, it's not, and it's like, if someone is requesting that you stop doing something, like, why not listen to them? Like, what do you have to gain that, this person is
winning
telling
the
you,
match, Ryan?
I know, but it's like,
is it okay for me to change my topic or my subject of criticism then? So you would blow the whistle and be like, grandma 3 times, you're out of here. But if it was like, kill 1, your grandma's bones are weak. Kill 2, your dad's bones are weak. Kill 3, your sister's bones are weak. Like,
well, that would,
do I get through the loophole?
The grandma isn't what's recurring there. The weak bones, the weak bones is the thing that's recurring. The motif of that troll. It depends on the tone. It depends on the age of the participants. It depends, like, are they really just saying one sentence? And does it seem like how targeted is it? Is the person trash talking other people? Is it just this one person that they're kind of like almost bullying? Are they following them? If after the match ends, in the lobby, they seek out that person and they continue to talk to them, right? Like, anything said in one match, it's hard to make the case that that's harassment because it's such a brief interaction, right? If you have like 2 minutes to like trash someone, it's not able to meet the persistence criteria. It could be repeated in that instance, but for it to be persistent, I think it has to be like tracking, maybe if you rematch this person and they keep doing it or something like that. But it's also like, why would you rematch someone who is trash talking you in a way that is making you uncomfortable? Like, maybe your whole family has osteoporosis and these weak bone comments are like really not hitting for you. Like, you're normally okay with all trash talk, but like the weak bones are just a sore spot that you like can't take. Don't queue up with that person, right? Like, that would be the obvious advice that you would give. It's like, you've already been burned by this person. There's no reason to believe that they're going to be a better person in this next match, But it's a tough case, I feel like that's kind of the edge case here, right? Where it's like, but the person isn't saying anything. Like, you're giving an example where the person isn't cursing, they're not threatening. It doesn't sound like they're like screaming at the person, and it doesn't even sound like it's really relevant to the gameplay, and it doesn't. They're not talking about what they're going to do, or like, it's not like, I fucked your mother last night, which is like,
that's like the prototypical every 13-year-old or younger's response on like gaming.
Yeah, I don't know, man. The osteoporosis community just needs some help. We don't need these weak bone comments. We need a humble bundle for people with weak bones.
Yeah.
What do you think? This feels like I'm under the gun here. What are your intuitions about harassment? About like, what do you think about this case of the person talking about the weak bones?
I think it's made me realize so much more that moderating trash talk is a very gray area and messy thing to do, and it is to some extent understandable that like so much language runs rampant in like various social gaming circles and things like that, because even with the report system, I don't know how well somebody could like get all the data they need to make a mostly just decision. Because you brought up, all these different factors of things you would have to consider, and like, did this insult repeat exactly at the insult? Was there like a target of that insult that kept going throughout? Has this happened for more than one match, which is a major factor? And so this whole conversation has just made me kind of like more so solidify in the back of my mind that Microsoft needs like an actual like building full of Xbox ambassadors, like being able to sort of like zoom in to like any game, any match, like get that data and like be able to analyze what exactly is going on.
That's not what Xbox ambassadors do. They have no power. They have no more power than a regular player.
Look. I'm talking about like the moderators, like the trash talk moderators.
Yeah, there are people,
but we can
paid.
report people. But we can report people.
Everybody
right? So
can.
like, who is going? Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But now my big question is like, who is in the cubicle getting these reports? Like, who's the person receiving the report? Not like
not
who's
ambassadors.
getting reported.
Yeah. Ambassadors are just people who say, like, I will keep a lookout, and I will report people if I see them doing bad. But anybody can report, and the people who are reviewing the claims of harassment are not Xbox ambassadors. They're paid professionals. Like, I don't know what department they would be in, but they're like Microsoft employees. Like, ambassadors are not employees. They're volunteers, basically.
Yeah, for sure. You guys are the dare officers of the Xbox community or something like that. But I am very intrigued to kind of, again, going back to the how it's made, like, reference, like, I'm very intrigued to see that pipeline of like, oh, Ryan has done his good job as an ambassador and found someone making fun of the other players' weak bones and saying their weak bones make them bad at gaming, and that's very mean. So I'm going to smash that report button, and then the episode begins where like, oh shit, I just got an email that RK Taylor reported this guy. Let me look into like why and what's there. Because at least from what I remember of like, you know, what I've been playing in VR recently and what I was able to do reporting wise, muting wise back on 360, it typically just seems like this little pop-up, like occasionally you can like add like a paragraph of text to explain what the situation was, right? But that's going to be heavily tainted by whoever's writing it because of like biases and their own like perception of the events that went down. And it seems like it would be so much better if you could actually get the whole game played, the whole chat log, any vocal things that they had done. And maybe there are more sophisticated systems out there that do this now. But just from what I know of our reporting capabilities, at least on the player-facing side, it seems like there is never enough data being given to the actual analyst that gets the report. And just figuring out like where is the line in general feels like very difficult and left almost purposely vague by whatever wording Microsoft used in their thing. So in conclusion, like after all of we've been saying, I am way more on the side of like everything has to be taken case by case, obviously, and there is seemingly no super clean way to cut this. So to that end, whoever
this is the pornography definition resurfacing. You're doing it. You're like, we'll know trash talk when we see it. We'll know harassment when we see it.
That's definitely what it feels like. Like that, it's so odd because there's so many different like ways. It definitely doesn't feel like as like, wow, that's stupid as like the pornography example, because it seems like you could like make some pretty clear fucking terms for that. But we've been working at, you know, making a framework for trash talk and like seeing where that trash talk goes out of the box and into harassment. And that itself has like taken a fair chunk of time. And I can only imagine with like millions of players and let's assume tens of thousands of reports going in, that it takes that much more effort and time to like judge what's going down. And then kind of like at a higher level, you know, why am I doing this, right? Like, is it really worth it to like cut this person off for like 24 hours or potentially a month or maybe even a permanent ban? If it's on the side of the more severe stuff, like I would say yes. But if I'm there like 8 hours plus a day going through these different reports and I see somebody on like the your bones are weak like type side, or it's like, you know, your bird sucks, something like that. I don't know. If I see someone on the weaker side, I would feel like I don't really need to handle this. Like, either let them go another day or like pass it off to somebody else. Whereas like, I guess I'm saying like I would be mostly focused on like the extreme stuff and like getting those people out.
You bring up a good point. You have to consider the payoffs of the people who are reporting, right? So what I mean by that is that you have an incentive to not report someone who is harassing you or trolling you or trash talking you, right? The incentive being you have better things to do with your time, probably, than then report this person. You don't know if that report's going to go anywhere. So you really have to have a vendetta to, compose a paragraph of text about what someone did that was wrong, how they wronged you. You're going out of your way to do that. And so there needs to be a real sense of like gratification, that you did the right thing in reporting this person, or that this person was just beyond the pale and really needed to be reported. So almost like it was like a moral thing, or maybe even vengeance could be the approach. But regardless, you're sacrificing your time for that person who already pissed you off, or maybe not for that person, but that's one interpretation, but like, for the principal or whatever, it is directly related to this person who was introduced into your life and was a negative force. And now you're doing work, for free in order to try to create this more balanced system. That's definitely a factor, and I think a lot of people aren't really afraid to trash talk or go in with even harassing people sometimes, because they just expect that people are not going to go through the trouble of reporting. Or maybe they've done it enough times and without having been reported, that they feel immune, and that's kind of why reporting works, because even if 1 in 10 people do it, the fact that you could be reported by any person, there's an incentive there to not harass, because you never know who it could be. The first person you harass, it could be the fourth person you harass. You never know who's going to report you.
So be nice to everyone. You don't know if Big Brother's watching, so be fucking nice, I tells ya.
Yeah.
So we kind of touched on a couple things that I'm glad we brushed on up until this point, right? We've talked about kind of different types of trash talk, which we've already kind of created a couple of key points for like a definition. And we've talked a little bit about harassments, threats, mind games. We've mentioned trolling and the factual criticisms of, you're playing bad, you didn't bring the flag over here, you didn't shoot a headshot, blah, blah, blah.
Really quickly, what is constructive trash talk? Like, is there such thing, or would it not be trash talk if someone was like, bro, you missed the basket, or like, that's not how you do a layup?
Yes, that's a great question.
Talk.
Is there such thing as recycling talk? Constructive trash talk?
It's still under the umbrella of sanitation talk, but it's not trash talk. It's recyclables.
I don't know if trash talk, at least for me personally, I wouldn't put constructive or anything positive as part of the trash talk. I think if there is positivity as like the overall end outcome of it, like it's not trash talk, meaning like you can't be like, oh, you fucking suck at this headshot, but damn, your costume looks good. Like that's still trash talk. Because it's like you fucking suck at the headshot or whatever. Or it could be like, good thing your character skin is so cool because your shooting skills fucking suck. Like, right? That's like a positivity thing, but there's still the trash talk there. If anything, it feels kind of worse because they're tying in this compliment into making you feel worse.
Yeah, it's so interesting. That almost feels like negging a romantic partner. It's like... That's I wouldn't call that constructive, those examples. I would say that those are compliment and insult, like, paired together.
So it would be something more like, if you aimed your mouse a little higher, your aim wouldn't fucking suck.
Yes, that's like, I'm actually teaching you a better way to do something while I'm shitting on you. It's like you're the meanest teacher I've ever had,
Damn, is that trash talk? I
think it is. I think saying that someone fucking sucks is like, it has to be trash talk. Even if there's a lesson there, it's helpful. It's constructive, but it could have been more constructive had the person not trash talked at all.
Yeah. So, that is a good point. For now, I will say, yes, we can have constructive trash talk, which is very interesting lane, and I honestly, just thinking about it, I kind of want to do it. Like I want to jump in the Call of Duty and just start doing it. Throw people off even harder. Why is he giving me tips but also telling me I'm bad? So like we kind of got to this by like talking about like the actual criticisms, right? So it's like we have this like objective based trash talking, not like capture the flag objective, but it's like, hey, there is something wrong being done here on a technical level, like you're not jumping right, you're not shooting right, blah, blah, and you're addressing that in the trash talk, right? And it could be either just a flat out like, wow, your aim fucking sucks, or it could be a constructive like, oh, if you took a breath or if you aimed in a certain particular area, then you would not fucking suck at shooting. Okay, those are our two branches of like actual criticism trash talk, right? The full negative and then the kind of like half and half sandwich. We have mentioned trolling. So like trolling, I think, is more of I feel like trolling is kind of like the kooky one, like what I was saying with like your mom's bones are weak, your dad's bones are weak, all the bones are weak. Like that one just sounds funny to me because like you don't hear that often. It doesn't have to do with the game necessarily. Like that's another part of the troll, right? It's really you're doing whatever possible thing you can to get a rise or a distraction out of your opponent, right? So with actual criticisms, you're not going to get the bones are weak or like your dog's actually a cat, like some stupid, just out of left field thing like that. But with trolling, that is probably like 10,000 times more likely to happen. And it could potentially be stupid stuff. Like I think we saw a Donkey video one time where he was playing, Among Us in Fortnite with a bunch of children. And one of them was dressed up like Venom, I think, and he kept calling him Spider-Man or some shit, or he was Carnage, right? And the little kid was like, I'm not Spider-Man, I'm Carnage, and he's like, no, you're Spider-Man, you got the red suit, and the kid's like, yeah, like he just is screaming about it because he will not accept that this guy is calling him a different character name. And that to me seems like more on the trolling end, because it's like, it's goofy, it's obviously like not real, meaning like, yeah, we know you're Carnage, but obviously you're reacting to it in such a way that it makes it funnier for him to keep the ruse going.
You can't handle the joke. The more reaction you get from the joke, the more the person is going to want to keep the joke going, and
yeah. So maybe trolling is more on the jokey end. You think like it's not necessarily. I'm not saying it's harmless, but I'm saying like in terms of like comedy,
it's kind of outside the game. It's not about like when we're talking about trolling, like compared to you're not aiming correctly, right, which is like directly related to the game. If you're talking about someone's like cosmetics or even things that aren't related to the game, like the bones situation, I mean, they're just outside the realm of the game, so they're jokes that you're telling the person to disrupt like the way that they're playing, but it's not a commentary on their play style. What do you think about like people trash talking people who are on their team? Like, let's say there's like an escape room type situation, like a collaborative kind of board game, or just like a video game. Like, let's say like, even Rocket League, where it's a team sport where it's like, let's say 4-on-4, and there's trash talking, like within team trash talking rather than like the between team or whatever the alternative to that would be, right? Like you could trash talk the people against you, but you could also be simultaneously trash talking someone on your team who you think is inadequate and who's like bringing down the team. What do you think about those situations, and how do you classify them differently? What's most important about those?
I believe that trash talk can be like equally applied or universally sent in any direction, and the genres of those trash talks still fit with either your opponent or your teammates. I personally don't like trash talking my teammates. Like, I am one that goes more for the constructive criticism or the like morale boosting like leader speech to try and help like get things along. I have definitely experienced people that just straight trash talk their team, and it never helps. It never helps. Like, I don't know what you're hoping to accomplish with that, where like, we could be playing Rocket League doubles, right? This tends to like happen in ranked mode or whatever, but like you're playing some Rocket League doubles and the only other guy on your team is like hitting these balls and then quick typing into his keyboard like, oh, I set the shot up, why the fuck didn't you go for it? Wow. And like then using the quick chat to keep berating you, right? And that doesn't like pump me up. It doesn't let me know like what I'm doing wrong, and it also, most importantly, like doesn't make me feel cohesion with the other person in a game where it is very much like, hey, I'm passing this ball to you, or I'm setting up a shot for you to like spike it into the goal. And we also see that in MOBAs where,
one of the reasons why I wasn't ever able to like really click with a MOBA is because of the trash talk. Like, there's an expectation that how to play that game well. And I also saw this when I would as a kid when I would play WoW and like it's like I reached the max level cap. What am I supposed to do now? And it's like you should do raids, you know? And it's like okay, I'll do a 25-person raid. I'm a healer, and I had no fucking idea what I was doing, you know? And then I got trash. I like fucking ruined the raid, you know, like the other healers are doing twice as much work to try to, you know, deal with the fact that like I haven't learned the rhythm of this, you know. And then it's like I realized like okay, I have to do a shit ton of research if I'm gonna keep playing this game, you know. And it kind of sucks to like have that realization, but the trash talk kind of gets you to be aware that you're not good enough. But generally, it has deterred me from continuing playing. Like I didn't want to play 25-person raids in WoW. That wasn't what I found fun. I also just didn't have the internet for that, right? And for MOBAs, it's like people are this fucking serious about this game. Like I'm here to have fun.
Unfortunately, the time sink for MOBAs makes everybody a lot saltier or more prone to getting salty in that game. Like the fact that, you know, you can't quit out of a match until 9+ minutes into a game. Usually these matches last like 30+ minutes long, and nobody wants to feel like this intense, like moment to moment 30-minute match that they just played was a waste, which is usually what the losses, the defeats feel like, right? And that makes them more prone to be like, oh, like, stop getting killed, like, you're just gonna make the next 23 minutes fucking unbearable. Ugh. And I'm totally with you there, where, like, besides the needing to click 1,000 times in, like, 60 seconds, which, like, I'm trying to reduce as much clicking on my mouse hand as possible, right? Aren't we all? But that trash talk, like, absolutely, even the prospect of the trash talk, like, makes me not want to go into the MOBA world, right? I think the one I got into the most was probably Smite, and even then, like, I wasn't just queuing up with randos. Like, I was almost always playing with a half to full party of people I personally knew, which made the experience much better and more fun.
Yeah, it's how to go into it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that seemingly the entire MOBA gaming community just sort of expects that anyone they randomly match with is going to have, like, 1,000 hours in the game and, like, know what they're doing.
Yeah, as I'm reflecting on this, like, being trash-talked by my own team experience, I'm realizing that, and this could be a fault of memory, but the way that I seem to recall it is not that I really felt bad about myself when I was getting trash-talked. I feel like, one, it has alerted me that I was not good enough, so it kind of served that social function, that signaling of, like, bro, get out of here. And two, I felt bad for the person who was getting so angry. Like, obviously this meant a lot to this person if they're feeling this level of emotion. And like, so for me, I think it's come across as more like there's a little bit of embarrassment, but it's mostly like kind of guilt. Like, I'm like, fuck, like I caused, like my inadequacy or like my lack of preparation or lack of understanding of what I was getting myself into led to one or a few people getting like severely tilted. And it's like, you never want to make someone angry just because you don't know what you're doing, you know? Like, I didn't, you know, and if you don't realize the weight of something before you get into it, you know? So I feel like this is probably a fairly common experience, you know? I think that there are probably a lot of people who like downloaded a game, played it, and the first time people were livid. You know, they were like, bro, go do your research before you play this. This is a real game. This isn't a kid's game, you know?
Right, which just immediately turns off whoever the fuck is trying to play the game. Because, like, you know, let's say for the vast majority of those people who are doing the trash talk, they didn't fucking do 12 hours of homework just to play their first round of League of Legends, right? Hell, they probably watched Arcane and was like, ooh, let me check this game out. Like, it's whatever, bro. Like, just calm the fuck down and queue up with friends. Like, if you don't want to run into that, you don't need to play League of Legends. Like, you don't need to play this game at the moment where you do not have a party to play with, right? Like, sure, you're going to be like, this is the game I like to play, though. But, like, realize that you are not only giving yourself a bad time, but you're giving everyone else a bad time because you're lashing out, right? Like, if you are going to choose... Yeah, if you are going to choose to play solo, like, play actually solo and, like, respectfully. And, you know, if shit is just going down the tubes, like, you do what you can to, you know, make sure you're not wasting too much of your time. But other players don't deserve to get some sort of lashing because you're just, like, upset with your current circumstance.
Yeah, I think this isn't really... I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how like related this is, but just as like kind of something to think about, right? If you're a person who trash talks with your friends and it hurts your feelings at some point, I think it's okay to talk to your friends about that. Like, maybe not immediately, but like down the line, like, hey, you said this one thing and it hurt my feelings. And like, we should be able to have that kind of conversation so that we can have better trash talk that's like less hurtful and maybe more funny or more, I don't know, maybe more of the constructive kind, like if trash talk is a part of your life, right? And I think similarly, like if you do trash talk your friends, like just checking in with them and being like, hey, I know I talk a lot of shit, but like, are we cool? Like, you know, like, have I ever said anything that like really violated like some kind of unspoken principle, or like did I ever like seriously hurt your feelings with anything I said while we were playing Fortnite? You know, like I think those kinds of check-ins are like just good for the life of a friendship overall. And it, you know, just
I agree with that. I think that's a really good idea. Something that I wanted to briefly bring up, since we are talking about trash talk and we've kind of mentioned that it's become maybe less of a problem in some places and more of a problem in others as gaming has evolved, is that party chat has kind of largely taken weight off of platforms to like mitigate trash talk. I feel there was this sort of like golden era where everybody had a voice, right? When the Xbox 360 came out and it came with the microphone. So literally everyone with the console would have a microphone and would be talking on there. And during that time, all the talk capabilities, like you could have private chat with one person. I remember, like, you could almost phone call them like through the Xbox, but it was again one-on-one chatting. Otherwise, you would have to be in the pre-game lobby or post-game lobby, meaning like, okay, I'm playing Call of Duty, it's a 4v4, it's a 8v8, whatever. I am now seeing the scoreboard and I'm seeing like this 30-second countdown before we go into the match, and everybody could talk. Literally everyone's mic is on, everybody's saying shit. And this is where trash talk, this is where like I had probably like the most trash talk like heard, right? Like I talked a little bit about trash talk locally, but in these pregame lobbies, it just fucking goes off. It's like if you're at like some sort of, let's say like a cockfight, and they bring the two roosters out to like look at each other in the cages, and they're like, I don't know what sounds rooster make, like fucking bok at each other or something like that. Like they're getting ravenous just from looking at each other. That's what the pregame and postgame lobbies were. Like when you would play like Black Ops 1 or Modern Warfare 2, Halo 3.
But with anonymity, too, that's part of the problem. It's like the same problem that we have like with the internet, where with trolling, where it's like you become a persona, you know, like you're not yourself anymore. You're not engaging in speak checks that speak to your character or to like who you really are as a person. You're kind of inventing a new part of yourself, and that persona becomes integrated into the rest of you.
Everybody turns into the heel. Like, that's a term we hear in wrestling for the bad guy, right? Everyone tries to become like the big bad guy wrestler when they're in that pre and post game lobby, right? It's like, oh, you guys, like, you're just trying to throw out like as many insults as you can, as fast as you can, to shake them before they actually get into the match, because in the match you can't hear each other, right? Originally almost supposed to be this like moment in basketball where after the match everybody walks by the other players and they like high five or shake hands, right? But sort of the opposite of that, because we're being introduced to the other team only for us to just go fully aggressive and degenerate towards them and them to us. And then after the game we sort of get to cash the check that the trash talk did before the game, right? So if we came into it saying, oh, we're gonna wreck you guys suck, your bones are weak, you can't find the power weapons, and then we win the match, right? We get to like lay into them for 30 seconds more, right? But if we end up losing, we have to go into that with our tail between our legs, and sure, people are still gonna trash talk till they fucking sink like the Titanic, but there is that potential like redemption part of like, oh, you were talking shit before the match, but it looks like you have like 17 kills and we got 50. Where's that energy, boy? And that has really gone away. Like, to get back to my main point, like that's really gone away with the like Xbox party chats, PlayStation party chats, the ability to have private chat active with like more than one friend. That created a huge shift in like social gaming, where now everybody is getting into these private vocal rooms with their friends or people they know close enough to do these chats with, and then going into the online games. Like, even if they're playing solo, like, it, you know, perfect vision, you're in this chat with 4 people and all 4 of you go to play Call of Duty, but it's more likely that like you're going to queue up solo, but you're still going to be in a party chat with other people because you don't even want to subject yourself to the possibility that there will be a trash talker or a harasser in the lobby. Right. And that's just something I've sort of noticed go away and somehow kind of like resurge with virtual reality. Yeah, virtual reality feels a lot like those earlier Xbox 360 days. Like, we do still have party chat on the Oculus OS or whatever it uses. It admittedly is not that good. I don't really like it, but you have both, I guess, is the main point of that, at least in VR. Like, you have the Wild West, like, bohemian sort of like everyone can voice chat, but you also have the ability to like put yourself in a private room with people. And I think just at least in the current phase of where VR gaming is at, more people are deciding to like be part of that social gaming circle rather than like closing themselves off to party chats with their friends. And so we see a lot more trash talk, potentially unregulated trash talk in virtual reality, because there's like less of an emphasis on that party system. That's all I wanted to briefly mention. I think we've talked a whole lot on trash talk within like the game itself. Are there examples of trash talk in like real life? I'm sort of thinking maybe like
road rage?
Potentially road rage. I was thinking maybe something at like a sports bar where like people are having some drinks. Let's say like the Packers and the Steelers are playing, something like that. And, you know, you have some guys on right side of the bar saying like the Steelers suck. And there's some people on the left side of the bar that's like, we love the Steelers. I hate them Packers. The Packers got weak bones.
And I come in and I'm like, y'all both wear yellow though. It's like all good. Like we don't need to do this. What unites us?
Yeah.
We all like football here.
Do you think we have like a tighter leash when it comes to trash talk outside of the games? Let's kind of remove the anonymity component, because that's a very obvious, like, yes, people see where the trash talk is coming from. But like we've sort of defined like types of trash talk and like sort of what our parameters for trash talk is. Do you think people like mostly follow those when doing trash talk in real life? Do you think people are likely to trash talk in real life given their target is probably like within their proximity, or people that care about that target are within their proximity, like the bar?
Yeah, there's so many incentives to not trash talk in real life, right? Like if you're trying to get a promotion, you're not going to like trash talk your coworkers who might be wanting the same promotion, right? Like that's just not a way of conducting yourself. It's not a business-like way of conducting yourself or whatever.
You're also not necessarily trash talking like a rival business,
right?
I guess.
Like there is still like competition, right? Like within that group, but trash talking the person like before or after the interview isn't really gonna. It doesn't seem like it's gonna change their performance in a way that will outweigh the cost to your reputation. Right, I guess is one way of thinking about it. You're going to seem like a dick, and this is someone that you may manage or someone who may manage you, and because you've made yourself look like someone who is incapable of dealing with like friendly competition in a harmonious way, you're kind of putting yourself out there. But with take something like if a server comes to me while I'm like at a restaurant, right? I have no incentive. Like we're going to have a transaction where I order food, the food is brought to me, I pay a tip, in response. There's no reason, like it's a completely collaborative experience, right? Like I'm going to pay you for the service. In an ideal world, your tip will correlate with how good your service is, right? So we only have reason to cooperate there. There's no real reason to compete against this person. They're on my team, I'm on their team. I'm helping them live, they're helping me live, But in the bar, it's interesting that you bring up a sports, like the sports example, right? Like neither of us are football fans, but we do see a lot of football fans, trash talk each other to the point where like it's like I think the Bills, the Buffalo Bills have like a reputation of being like some of like the unruliest fans, where like if you're not a Bills fan and you go into the stadium, like you'll get like yelled at and shit, you know, and it's like, so what's that about, right? Is the kind of the question, like, why is that happening? And because I don't really get sports on like a deep level, I'm not really sure what is going on in the minds of people who feel like who feel identified with a particular team. But I think on some level, you're advocating for something that you love and that you believe in, but that you fundamentally know is arbitrary and like not the most. The world isn't going to change because the Steelers win or lose the Super Bowl, right? It's entertainment, so you can put a lot of like stock into this, like trash talking as like filler language, as like, you know, it's kind of BS. You're not trying to convey a point, or, you know, it's again that signaling kind of device. I think when people are trash talking on behalf of a sports team, there's kind of this knowledge that like the sports themselves don't matter. They're just for fun. So the trash talk itself is also not something that matters. Compare that with something like religion, where people feel like find their religion to be like the most important thing. It's like the core of their value set. People aren't going to trash talk about their religion because it's too important to trash talk. And like, in fact, people will wage war, which is like much more serious and lethal than just like BS talk, you know? I mean, we don't even we call it blasphemy in the church if you say something wrong. We don't call it trash talk, you know, and it could be that you're trash talking or trolling, but like the church has a whole way of perceiving that, you know, and it's not just the Christian church, you know, this is across, you know, different religious affiliations. But
so is this to say that like ultimately trash talk is kind of something meant to stay or occur only within a like play environment? Or just trivial topics?
Yeah, yeah. I think like the more serious a topic is, the less likely people are to trash talk about it. Like you wouldn't refer to those speech acts as trash talk anymore because they're too severe. There's something playful about trash talk, right? Like even though it's mean-spirited often or competitive, like it's not like, you know.
Well, if it's playful though, Ryan, like you brought up road rage, would we consider people talking shit? And I say that with specific purpose. When people are talking shit to other cars as they do something that they dislike on the road, does this form of road rage, does that count as trash talk, or is that more something else?
Yeah, it's definitely not trash talk.
There's like the other party doesn't hear it.
Yeah. It was the closest thing that I could think of when you started talking about like real life examples of trash talk, but it isn't accurate. You know, when we think about someone like flipping the bird to someone else, if that was the end of the interaction, that perhaps that could be considered like trash talk or like nonverbal talk, you know. But when it gets escalated and when it impacts people's driving, it is impacting their performance, like we were talking about trash talking in video games. But the fact that there's like something lethal that could come out of that, and like, you know, people really escalate, and you do have the kind of anonymity too, right? Like you're not actually anonymous. It's not like you have a mask on your face, but you're in a sealed box. You know, you're driving like thousands of pounds of steel, and you can. You know, it's a weapon. You're driving a weapon that, you know, could like be used to run this person off the road, you know, if it got, you know, serious enough. But again, there should be nothing adversarial about other people who are driving, even someone who, you know, cuts in front of you, right? Like that is a sunk cost. We can ignore the fact that person just cut in front of you, unless you think that they're going to have a habit of doing that all the time. If they're doing it for fun, and you're kind of like, if you're the bird and they're a cat and they're just like beating you and like watching you, you know, fly in and out of the lane because they keep cutting you off. Obviously, that's a person who's dangerous, right? And that should be handled. But if it happened one time, you have no reason to be angry at that person anymore, right? Like you should be letting that moment go almost immediately. You feel that anger rise in you when you're cut off, and the most responsible thing you can do is not drive angrily and not allow that to affect you. But if you flip off that person, what you're kind of saying is, this was an adversarial relationship. We both wanted the front spot. You cut in front of me, and now I'm briefly pissed at you. You flip that person off and you let it go, and that person lets it go. Maybe they don't even observe. I kind of view that as trash talk. You know, like that one act. But if it goes further than that, if there's back and forth, it seems to me to be almost like too dangerous and too serious of a situation for us to be like, ah ha ha ha, what trash, like just like Halo and teabagging someone, you know. It's like, no. This could be a 4-car pileup, you know, like you could have a bunch of, like, this could be a devastating event. Like, I find road rage incredibly dangerous. I don't engage in road rage. I'm like pretty afraid to be in a car with people. I have been in the car with people who got so angry that I was concerned for like the safety of everybody. You know, it's like, you really should not be operating a vehicle angry, similar to how you should not be operating it drunk. You know, you're under the influence of anger, right? And anger is a really powerful emotion, and it could cause you to, you know, swerve or drift or not pay attention to things that you would ordinarily pay attention to. And driving is serious, you know?
And that's part of the reasons, going back to earlier in the episode, why someone would trash talk in a game, is to get somebody so angry that their abilities are impaired, right? That's what we call getting tilted, but we don't necessarily say getting tilted when you're driving a car. Also, it was just kind of funny to hear you go into the explanation of like trash talking during a race, because I very much remember like the first 3 Fast and Furious movies having exactly that. Like literally 2 people are like like Paul Walker and like another guy are like driving down this straightaway or whatever, and they're racing back and forth to who could get to the red light, and they're overtaking each other. There's like middle finger action, a little bit of like, haha, I guess you don't got the right timing on the Nas, like type.
Yeah, but that's a
thing.
Competitive event. Like, it makes sense to trash talk. I'm not condoning drag racing. Like, I haven't seen these movies, and I don't know how safe or like what the parameters.
Oh, it's always illegal. Almost always illegal.
So safety hazards aside, let's make it a more official event, and let's say the streets were blocked off and everything like that.
Yeah,
trash talking does make more sense there, even though there is still a risk of getting hurt and like it being dangerous. You know,
there's more of a sporting event environment in that case. Yes, so it seems like when we are talking about trash talk, you know, it's mostly going to be in some sort of game type environment. And when I say game, I broaden that to both sports and video games, because both are definitely games. And it seems like, because maybe it's part of the magic circle, you know, the sort of like ethereal idea that like everybody participating in a game, the audience included, are entering this like imaginary magic circle where scoring a hoop in basketball equals 2 points. We've all agreed to this. We all agreed that that's important. We are part of this magic circle. So maybe it's more so that when we're within the magic circle, this type of like trash talk, I guess, not even a type of, just when we're in the magic circle, trash talk seems to be far more acceptable than outside of the magic circle. Outside of the magic circle, it seems like trash talk is just immediately turned into like threats and or harassment and or just like rude behavior. But within the context of a game, we seem to be a little more forgiving about it, or at least we sort of know what's up. Like, we know like, oh, they're probably saying this because they want me to like not perform as well. I just need to keep my head in the game. Gotta get your head in the game, and, you know, just fucking focus on what you gotta do. Yeah, you're saying
it's like almost like a suspension of disbelief, kind of, you know, like.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's some sort of suspension of threat belief, I guess. Like, you know, like if somebody's like, I'm gonna kill you if you pick up the rocket launcher. Like, or like, fuck the Green Bay Packers. Damn it, they scored another point. I wish the whole fucking earth would swallow them up. Like, obviously, you're just saying like dumb, wild shit because like there's a game going on. But yeah, nobody thinks you actually want some Dark Knight Rises shit to happen where the whole football field collapses and the Green Bay Packers get swallowed up by Earth. Like, you just want them to lose, or you want them to not be there so your team could win. Now, moving on to our third segment. This is the D-Pad Hot Take. This is the second time we're doing it. The Hot Take is a segment where one of us will come to the show with some sort of opinion about video games that we might think is controversial. And we will explain that in optimally one sentence. And from there, we can have a conversation about it. The person giving the hot take can kind of explain the evidence behind their hot take. And we just sort of like figure it out. And if you agree with this hot take, or you have thoughts on the hot take that kind of bring the conversation out further, feel free to send us those thoughts. We'd love to hear what you think about the show and hear what you think about the hot takes. And if you want to see more of the hot takes, you know, let us know. If you don't like the hot take segment at all, let us know that as well. But for now, we're going to give you a piping hot take. So get your mugs ready. It's going to be steamy. Ryan, what is the take you're giving us today? What is the scalding hot take you're giving us?
QuickTime events are so condescending.
What do you mean by that? When you say QuickTime events, QTEs for short, are condescending.
Damn, I didn't know we needed an abbreviation. QuickTime events are they're moments in games where you have to press a specific button. Typically, the screen will display some action that requires that you press a button in order to complete an objective. And there's often like a time limit for this. You know, you'll fail a mission or something if you don't press X at the right moment. They're often, they have like cinematic, they're happening like in ways that seem cinematic. So, you know, we used to, when we were kids, Los, we would just like, we would watch a cutscene, and then when it was over, then we would be able to you know, have the mechanics back, the opportunity to engage with the mechanics. And I think they were a tool to try to get players to continue to pay attention to the narrative, because they could be surprised at any point that they had to they had to actually interact with the cinematic. So it was an attempt to bring mechanics to the cinematic. Any corrections or anything?
No corrections. I think you have it on the money. QuickTime events are button prompts or actions / inputs that you need to do during some sort of cinematic event. For example, Spider-Man swinging through a burning building. Now, all of a sudden, the X button on your Xbox controller, like that prompt pops up on the screen, right? And the whole place slows down. That's why it's called like a QuickTime event. It's not always associated with slow-mo, but it's like, oh, this is something that you need to press quickly in order to keep things going and be successful, right? So in some cases, the game slows down. In other cases, it's all going real time and you're just like meant to press the button as it appears. But it often results in like an A or B outcome, right? You press the button, okay, the cutscene's going to keep going on. Spider-Man shoots his web and he swings through and he saves someone. You don't press the button. Yeah, Spider-Man falls flat on his face, zooms in on, you know, this scientist. Oh my God, I'm going to die. And then you see the building explode. That's like one of the more memed like QuickTime events. And like they are so prevalent that they have become memed, and, you know, plenty of video essayists have like done commentary videos on that mechanic in particular. Why do you feel like they are condescending, though? You've explained that they're trying to bring players more engagement with narrative moments, or cinematic moments, I should say, because narrative moments can exist all over the place. It's not just cinematics.
Yeah, so they're condescending in the sense that there's no real challenge associated with them, right? They're just kind of forcing your attention to be occupied and that your hands to be glued to the controller. When I'm watching a cutscene, I want to put a controller down. I want to like stretch out, you know, I want to like rotate my wrists. I want to like curl my fingers. Maybe I want to plug my phone in, like, you know, charge my phone like a little bit. I don't want to have to be glued to the controller, even when you're kind of playing a movie for me. And it doesn't seem like, I don't think nobody's favorite part of a game is the QuickTime event. Like nobody's like, I played Spider-Man because the QuickTime events are amazing. You know, it's a bonus that they're throwing in there to try to make the game fun, but it's kind of a waste. And it's a mechanic that has been replicated across a lot of games at this point, and it's not innovative. It's not really interesting. It's nobody's having a lot of fun with it. Perhaps there are people who like QuickTime events. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody will dislike QuickTime events, but I don't think that they're really respecting player agency, despite the fact that they are trying to keep you engaged. There's something about it that feels like you're not appreciating my time. You're not allowing me to engage with the story on the level that I would like to. If I want to walk around or stretch my back while a cutscene is on, I should have the ability to do that. I shouldn't have to, be engaged at every single moment.
It would be nice to be able to disable QuickTime events specifically for cinematics.
Oh my gosh, I love that idea.
I know that there are some accessibility options to disable QuickTime events in general, as well as like button tap events, maybe even button hold events. Like you can sort of disable them or have them autocomplete. That's usually the case, is like, oh, the QuickTime event will autocomplete because, some players will have weak bones and they can't hit the buttons fast enough. But no. Like for real,
you're terrible.
There will be there will be things that we can do to kind of like make that pressure easier on players who don't want to like do the QuickTime events or continuously tap the buttons, right? And I just wish that was an option in general for only the cutscenes, because I do like QuickTime events when they're used in actual gameplay. And when they're used cleverly. Like, I don't just like QuickTime events, but, I was there, like, playing Resident Evil 4 when it, like, first hit GameCube. And part of what made that game so freaking cool is the fact that it had QuickTime events. And honestly, Resident Evil 4 is like probably one of the games that like really sent QuickTime events into the stratosphere in terms of like, what did everybody comment on when they reviewed about this game? What were people on forums writing about when they talked about this game, right? It was always the like, oh my God, this boulder fell down and then I had to press like A super fast to run away from it. And then I had to press both triggers to dodge to the side. That was so cool. Or like this cutscene where Leon and Krauser are having a knife fight on top of a steel cage. Oh shit, I'm pressing these buttons and it's making all the action happen. And when I don't press the button, I die. That's pretty cool. And I think the businesses just maybe took too much of that to heart. Because something I saw that was like a really good point from a Resident Evil 6 retrospective was that this game, Resident Evil 6, and its QuickTime events were kind of this amalgamation of everything that was being like positively commented on before, like, you know, in Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5 leading up to 6, which ended up getting like a really big, like bad reception in terms of like a Resident Evil game. But the developers and or like the publishers above the developers had noted like everything that was being positively responded to, and QuickTime events were a major thing. And like you said, many other games ended up like taking that because there was so much positive sentiment, and as players we liked this. But I do agree with you that it got stale very quickly, and I think it is, especially nowadays, way more of a checkbox thing rather than a let's think of how to do this better type thing, right? It's always just, hey, let's press a button here. Every now and then you get a game that does it slightly different. Like I want to say the Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War series, Middle Earth. Like they changed it up so that now you had to use your thumbstick to drag the input button into the slot where you're supposed to press it, and then you can press the button, right? So it's kind of like now making the mini game, the QuickTime event, 2 steps rather than just press this button in the amount of time. It's like navigate to this location and then press the button. In any case, it's always the cinematic action is trying to be translated into some controller action, which is like,
it feels forced sometimes. I really like what you're saying about like multi-steps having, you know, there's something mini game like about it. Like I've in the past, I think on the show I talked about how like it'd be cool if like Mario Party, like when you were rolling the die, like that itself was like a mini game, or like just like something small that like was incorporated, right? And I do like there are QuickTime events where it's press one button. There are QuickTime events where it's press the button like as many times as you can, or like 10 times, you know. And then there are ones where it's like drag and put it in this hole and then you press R2 and then aha, you know, it's like you unlocked it, right? What's challenging there is the time constraint. But to your point, like when these are in cutscenes, right? Gosh, this is gonna be a hard point for me to articulate, okay? But I find it to be immersion breaking, I think, is like one of the greatest faults of them, okay? When I'm playing as, let's go back to Spider-Man. You used that example earlier. When I'm playing Spider-Man and I'm swinging through the city, I don't see anything on the screen that tells me what right trigger does, or like that is like the swinging button, right? But when you're in the middle of a cutscene and then it's like, press R1 right now, you're reminding me that this is a video game. Like I'm being like hit with that idea of like, aha, this isn't really Spider-Man, even though this is the middle of a cutscene and you're supposed to be processing the story will not go on until you press this exact button, right? It's like, it's a bad time to remind me that I'm playing a video game. Obviously, I don't ever forget that I'm playing. Like, I could pause at any point and be like, yes, I'm playing a video game. I'm at this point in the story, right? But when you're delivering story, it's not the time to remind me of a button input, I think.
I agree, and I have kind of like a radical idea to maybe address it. Something that I liked in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is they had this counter system where it would display this like a specific color of kanji next to your character when an enemy character was going to do some sort of like big brutal attack. And let's just say that these big brutal attacks have some directionality, right? That give you a direct counter to it. So like one, let's say red kanji meant it was a thrust and therefore you would have to do a down counter. Yellow kanji would be like attack from above your head. So you had to do some sort of above counter. And then green kanji is like an attack from the left or right. So you do a counter that way, right? Now, if Spidey sense again, really just focusing on the Spider-Man example, if Spidey Sense had these different colors to it and you could tie those into the buttons on the controller, you potentially have a much more natural way to notify people what button they need to press. But at the same time, you are kind of like abstracting that information. So rather than putting up a like blue X button on the screen, it's now, oh, Spider-Man's like wavy Spider Sense lines are blue. As a player, if I can recognize and remember that like the blue button is the X button, I then can sort of know like, oh shit, like I pressed that button at the right time and I managed to dodge. But also at the same time, like you're watching a cutscene, so you don't necessarily know you're supposed to do the action unless you have some sort of sly notifier, right? Like not even sly, but like I think in my example I just gave, I would have some sort of sly notifier where it's like, if you see the controller button in the top right corner of the screen or some little thing that's not like super intrusive, it's letting you know that it basically turns into like Dragon's Lair, where like, oh shit, now I know I am going to be interacting during this scene, but it's up to me to figure it out. Like I have to choose whether that is a button press or a controller move or what have you. I think that would be pretty cool. Maybe that would almost be like a pro mode, because again, with these like higher budget games, you need to appeal to as many people as possible, and a large group of that crowd is going to be people who don't like fully remember every single button on the controller or what their color is and what have you. So it's safer to go with what you've experienced, which is have this big ass button on the screen, give the player enough time to like look down at their controller, look back up at the screen, and then press the button, and yada yada yada. Like all of that is being done so that the widest amount of people can play this game and know what to do. But it does subtract from that immersion and that fantasy, that suspension of disbelief that you're giving to this game for them to achieve that goal of making it accessible to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I wonder, like, I like that you mentioned the accessibility and like how they have to market this to a bunch of people. And I wonder if things that are like generally like media, right, I wonder if the ones that are marketed to as many people as possible also tend to be the ones that people who are passionate about that media will find condescending, you know? And I guess like next time we're going to be talking about like AAA tropes and things like that. And hopefully that's the plan currently. So sorry, dear listener, if you are disappointed that you don't find that. But I think we can really get into a lot of that stuff next time and talk about. I hope we can bring in the condescension, because I think it might be a good thread.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a lot of things now that are just so explained to players, and maybe not explained, but just like heavy-handedly telegraphed, which I personally tend to lean on the side of more heavy-handed telegraphing, just from what my experience has taught me. Because as much as I advocate for the players like having to figure stuff out and things like that, it makes your game way less accessible. Like you want people to like figure it out and feel good, but there are so many people that just want to play and like not have to go through those harder parts, I guess. And, you know, there's just kind of, it's a push and pull that like gets figured out. And maybe over time, like let's say 10 years from now, maybe QuickTime events are so just
oversaturated or
done so often, or oversaturated might be a good word as well, where like everybody knows, like even if you're like a 2-year-old toddler playing like Elsa's dress up on your iPad, somehow that even has QuickTime events, and you're just so familiar with it that now we see QuickTime events get those innovations where like it becomes more like Dragon's Lair, right? Because everyone's so familiar with it, now they're like, well, of course I'm able to play the game during the cutscene. What are you talking about? But now it's kind of taken shape in a different manner. That's my hope. I always just hope for innovation. Like QuickTime events are neat, and obviously they have a lot of cons that we've mentioned here, but I think they could be another like real continuously elevating part of gameplay and engagement interaction. But just the way things are now, especially from bigger budget games, I think it's highly unlikely for you to find anything that's like new and wowing about QuickTime events. It's more often than not just going to be I guess as you put it, condescending. Like, it's just going to try to give you the biggest bang for the minimal buck of, like, you know, press this button, do the thing.
Thank you for listening to Deep in the D-Pad. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share us with your friends.
For updates and discussion, follow us on Reddit at r/deepinthedpad, Facebook at deepdpad, and subscribe to Deep in the D-Pad on YouTube. Don't forget to hit the bell.
And if you want to ask us questions or get a chance to share your own D-Pad delight on the show, email us at askdeepinthedpad@gmail.com. Be sure to put question or delight in the subject line.
Big thanks to 8-Bit Jazz and Kevin MacLeod for supplying the music for the show.